Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adrian and today we are going to be doing another weekly wrap up. We're doing a My Week in Books. This is where I tell you what I've been reading this week, what I finished, some quick spoiler-free thoughts about what I am reading or what I have read, and maybe give you a sneak peek at what I might be picking up next as well. So let's jump straight in. Last week, when I filmed this video, I actually had just finished 2 books, so I had nothing that I was currently reading at that moment. I'd literally just finished a couple of books the night before, so got some fresh books that we're going to be talking about today. The first one of those is going to be what I immediately picked up on audiobook, and that is the Dresden Files, the next book in the Dresden Files that I've been rereading for the umpteenth time, and that is book 6, Blood Rights. Now, Blood Rights has an interesting place in the Dresden fandom. I feel like for most people, a lot of people, it is one of their least favourite books. Once you get out of the first couple, which are definitely seen as the weakest, Blood Rights would then be pretty low down the list for most people. And some of that is because of the slightly, it's just not the most exciting main plot that we get in it. Sort of the A plot is pretty okay, but nothing majorly exciting. However, on a reread for me, the B plot is brilliant. I really like the sort of secondary plot and the secondary climax we get in this book. I think it's done really incredibly well. And the other thing that we get with this book is we get a lot, and I mean a lot, of setup for future books. So that I mean we get new characters introduced who are going to be mainstays. We get characters who we have seen but are sort of changing their role in the series, which I think is done incredibly well also. We also then get villains that we have to deal with, some of them recurring villains, some of them not. Again, it's just done really, really well. So for me, the A plot is the biggest weakness of this book. If you're basing your judgment on what happens in the A plot, it is one of the weaker Dresden books. But there is so much other stuff going on around the edges. There's big character development for Harry. There's big changes for the secondary characters, as well as being introduced to those new secondary characters. And I think it does a lot of heavy lifting. Knowing what's coming, this book does some really, really big heavy lifting, whether that's to do with Thomas, for those of you who know about the series, whether that's to do with Murphy, whether that's to do with Harry himself. I just think it's done incredibly, incredibly well. It isn't the best Dresden Files book still. It's 4.5 stars for me. I really like it, but it is definitely still on the lower end, but I think somewhat underappreciated. That's my conclusion, having reread it this time, is that it is definitely not the best Dresden Files book, but it is underrated, I think, by the fandom as a whole. So that's the one book I finished this week. I have started another 2 books as well as that. Neither of these were rereads, these are both for the first time. The first one of those I'm going to talk about is Emperor Blood of Gods. This is by Connor Gordon. This is book 5, the finale, the ultimate book of the Emperor series. This is a Roman historical fiction following the lives of Julius Caesar, Marcus Brutus, Pompey, Marius, Sulla, all these people, all these big names in Roman history. I would say that I'm currently about 1/3 of the way through it. I am enjoying it. I am enjoying it quite a lot, not quite as much as I have the previous couple. So I think in my previous comments about the series, I've maybe been a little bit harsh on book 3 and book 4. I sort of just came in and said, yeah, they're like the others, they're fine, they're 4 stars. Reflecting a little bit more, I feel like the book 4 was probably a 4.5 star read. I think it was the best. I think we had really built up to a good, really well thought through plot. I was really getting to know the characters more. It was probably better than I gave it credit for. What I will say is that book 5 for me so far is still fine, but it's much more like book 1 and 2, where it's good, enjoyable. I'm liking to see where it goes, but there are some things that have happened with the plot that just make it not quite as interesting. Some of the characters we're following are not as interesting as ones we have previously followed. Now obviously Connor Gordon is following history as much as he can, that still makes a compelling story. So yeah, he can't do things that don't make sense in the timeline, but I am enjoying it. I think it is very different to the first 4 books, and that's because of those point of view shifts. Still good. I'm still enjoying it. I'll definitely get to the end of it, and I think it will be a good series for me to have dipped my toes in the water of historical fiction. Obviously, I've still got about 2/3 of the book to go, so we'll see exactly how that lines up. But at the minute, still enjoying it. It's on for maybe a 4-star read, but we'll see. We'll see. And then the last book that I have been reading this week is The Shadow of What Was Lost, this bad boy here. As you can see, I'm about, what's that? About 300 pages in, so that's just under halfway through, maybe 40% of the way through. So this is by James Islington. So far, my thoughts. It is a pretty tropey start to an epic fantasy series. Now, if you look at my favourite series of all time, you will realise that I probably don't mind that. The Wheel of Time is one of my favourites. Lord of the Rings, one of my favourites. Obviously, it wasn't as tropey then because it was Tolkien doing it for, you know, not the first time, but yeah, reinventing fantasy a fair bit. But as well as that, I also love John Gwynn's books, which can be pretty trope heavy as well. We do get this young protagonist who's growing into the world, who has unknown powers, it has unknown abilities. And it is pretty tropey in that sense. It does start out in a school setting. We're not there for very long, but we are there for a little bit of time. So it is got those tropes going as well. Overall, I'm really enjoying the plot. It does feel a little bit sort of Lord of the Rings Wheel of Time derivative, probably more Wheel of Time derivative. But it moves very fast. It's a very fast-paced plot, and I actually quite like that. I do enjoy our characters. There are sort of 3 main characters we're following, and for me, they're done relatively well. They can occasionally come off a little bit flat. They're not the most amazing characters I've ever seen. I am also only 300 pages through the first of this trilogy, and it's a debut author, so we'll see how he copes, how he changes, how all these characters develop. As it is, they can feel a little bit flat, but if you like a good plot, if you're a plot reader and you don't mind some classical fantasy tropes, this could be a really good place for you to jump in. I'm pretty on board with it. I like the world that's being built. I like the magic systems that we're getting. All in all, if you don't mind a bit of tropey fantasy, I think you would really enjoy this. Like I am enjoying this. This is definitely a very enjoyable read for me. But if you are someone who doesn't like those classical tropes of young man, you know, discovering he has powers or abilities or gifts, you know, if you don't like that kind of tropey start to a series, it might not be for you. Obviously, I've still got a long way to go. By this time next week and my next check-in, hopefully I'll be finished or very nearly finished, and you'll get some fuller thoughts. But as an intro, love the world, love the setting, love the magic. Just sometimes the characters can feel a little fractionally flat, and it is very tropey, which may or may not bother you. I'm sure you know whether that's something that you care about or not. So next week, I'm going to be continuing with both those 2 books that I'm currently reading. I should be getting through the final book of the Emperor series pretty soon. I'm not quite sure what I'll pick up then. I have picked up a few new audiobooks in the Audible 2-for-1 sale we've had in the UK. I am tempted to go back to another Tchaikovsky. I've got Cage of Souls as an audiobook, which I might jump into, or there's the new Christopher Paolini release that is out as well that I've got on there that I've heard very, very mixed feelings on. I've heard very mixed opinions. I'll be interested to see if it is long and boring and pointless, or whether I actually really mesh with Paolini's writing. I've not read any of the Aragon series, so it would be a completely new read for me. For some reason, I'm completely blanking on the name of it. So I will put up a picture here as to what it is called, because I'm an idiot. It's part of the Fractal Verse. I remember the Fractal Verse, but I don't remember what it's called. Yeah, so that's what I'm considering getting into. We'll see whether or not what I do decide to pick up. But hopefully I will have been coming to the end of the Emperor series. You should get a Should I Read the Emperor series coming soon, hopefully, because I think it is worthwhile to know what you're getting into, especially for those of you like me who aren't big historical fiction readers. I hope that's been interesting. I hope you've enjoyed seeing what I've been reading this week. Sorry there's not been many books I finished to give you conclusive opinions on, but hopefully next week there will be a lot more of those. If you like the video, don't forget to click like, subscribe if you want to see more of the content, and hopefully I'll see you guys again soon.